Welcome, everyone, to the Sandy and Bob Show. Today is July 2nd, 2019, and we have a very, very special show for today. We have a couple very brave whistleblowers, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But I always want to start my show by reminding all our listeners how important it is to sing New You for about 15 to 20 minutes every morning and every night, and call on the Real Guides to show what is real. We're living in a created universe. It's a creation. It's not real life. It's a simulation of real life, and we need to wake up. It's much like when you wake up from a dream into our regular everyday life. Well, waking up to the real side is like waking up from a dream in reverse, where you go into the dream state, and that's the real side. So you need to snap out of your physical life and wake up to the reality of the real side, and the Real Guides are here to show you how to do that, and they will not work with you unless you're willing to show intent. And the way you get their attention and show the Real Guides that you intend to find out what the truth is and move on with your life is by singing New You for 15 to 20 minutes every morning and every night, and asking the guides to show you what is real. And you can sing New You about any way you want. I sing it like New You, but you can sing it any way you want and call on the Real Guides. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining me today. This very, very special program today is we have the opportunity to interview a couple whistleblowers, and one of the whistleblowers is a full-blooded family member of the royal family over in Europe. Commonly, we were taught about their families in our history books. They're known as blue bloods, and what they are is they are a group of reptilians with the ability to shapeshift into human form. And they're basically reptilian, but by being able to shapeshift into human form, they're able to take over and run every single aspect of life on planet Earth. They run all the governments, they run all the political parties, they run all the militaries, they run all the religions. There is no aspect on this earth that they are not in control of. They run the banking systems. The Rothschild family is very big on running the financial systems. And most people living on planet Earth, most human beings, think that all these government leaders and religious leaders and so forth are just regular human beings, just like them, that just got elected to office because they were smarter than the person next to them. Well, actually, nothing could be further from the truth. It's these reptilian shapeshifters have been in power for thousands and thousands of years, and they hide their identity. And what's so special about today is we have a very special guest that has seen the crimes against humanity that these reptilian shapeshifters are perpetrating on the human race, such as altering our food. They alter our food by putting chemicals in our food. They put poisons in our drinking water. They have chemtrails where they spray the atmosphere, and they're poisoning the oceans. And they have done so much damage that if it isn't stopped within the next couple of years, life on this earth will cease to exist as we know it today. Life will be unsustainable. And today we have the honor of one of the blue-blooded reptilian shapeshifters has come forth because he can see the writing on the wall, and he has to live on this planet too. And so he has come forth and is going to share his knowledge by being an insider of the blue-blooded reptilian families of Europe. Now, for people that aren't familiar with the reptilian families or the blue bloods, and they're usually the bloodlines of the kings and queens of like the 1800s. You had the king of England, the king of Spain, the king of France. All these are blue-blooded families, and the kings were mostly shapeshifters, and they got their power not by popularity from the public, but they got their power by being ruthless and killing off any of the people that would go against them. And today we have William, who is a member of the royal family from Europe, who has come forward to risk his life. I can't say any more about his name, where he's from, other than he's from Europe, and he's willing to share some of his knowledge about what the royal families have been doing on this planet, a little bit about how they control the planet, how they control the religions, how they control the governments, and maybe even touch on some of the dastardly things that they do, such as some of them are pedivores, and they're really at their worst, they're really nasty. You know, I'm not saying all of them are really nasty. William seems to be a pretty good guy that's come forward to share this with us. So go ahead, William. Would you like to start making a few comments on what you want to share with us today?
Well, thank you for that introduction there. And I'm just wondering where to start at. It's been a racket we've been running here for a long time. Well, what part of the story are you interested in?
Well, I would say that maybe part of it is, you know, obviously you must be working with some reptilians with some really advanced technologies, and we know a little bit about the reptilians from Orion that came here and created the human form, which is written in the clay tablets, and that was revealed. I don't know if they were bragging or whatever, but they recorded in the tablets in the Middle East. Zechariah Sitchin was a professor who translated a lot of the writings, and basically they recorded how the reptilians from Orion came to Earth searching while they came here, and they found gold, and they wanted somebody to mine the gold, and so they created the human form to be slaves to do the mining, and they also found that the human form was a very delicious form of food for the carnivorous reptilians, and so they came here and kind of started the ball rolling with the human beings, the human race. And what's kind of interesting, which is unknown to most people think that when I'll say quote unquote God created Adam and Eve, they thought that they were creating Adam and Eve, and once they breathed the breath of life into them, they became a living soul. Well, that's not really the case. That's not really exactly what happened. What happened was they took smart monkeys that were indigenous on the planet Earth, and they created the human form and gave them enough intelligence to run their mining equipment and all this sort of thing. But when they breathed the breath of life into them, what happened was, as soon as they became living entities, real beings from the all-is, from the real side, came into creation and incarnated into that human form. And these beings of light, which you and I are, were beings of light from the real side, came in to get experiences in creation. We were very aware of what the reptilians were doing. And so we instantly recognized that we are created by these reptilians to be slaves and to be food for them. And that's when the reptilians started their religion of animal sacrifices, because they had such a problem controlling the humans that they had to make a pact with them. And one of the pacts that they made was they told the humans, well, if you will raise cattle and sheep and sacrifice them to us and have burnt offerings to us, we will eat those sacrifices rather than eating you. So that was one of the steps toward the reptilians had to use toward controlling the human beings. Another one that they used is that they said they were the God, creator of the human beings. Well, they created the human form, but they didn't create the beings of light that incarnated in. And so you had this rebellion by the beings of light that were still aware when they first entered into the human form that they knew what the reptilians were doing. So the next step in the progress, and this took a lot of time. What eventually happened was, and I don't even know if your family even tells you this history, William. What happened was these reptilians from Orion were just experts at DNA modifications, and when they made the human form to be slaves, they also made what you would call kind of like just for easy explanation, I'll use the word half-breed, half reptilian and half human. And what they did is they created their own race of beings that was similar in size to the human beings, but yet were reptilians. They were part of the reptilian group, but they gave them the wherewithal and gave them the proper genes and enough of the human DNA where these reptilians could actually shapeshift from the reptilian form into human form, and then they would send these shape-shifted humans out into the masses of humanity, and the humans living on Earth had no idea that when they were talking to the man next to them, that the man next to them was really a shape-shifting reptilian in disguise. And these shape-shifting reptilians were very brutal, and they would do whatever they could in their power to take control of everything that the human beings did. And so down through the years, and it really expanded back around 150 to 250,000 years ago in the Middle East. They practically controlled the entire Earth at that time, and there was a few disasters, a couple of nuclear wars that took place, and those people finally migrated over into Europe, and that's where your family came from. You're descended from those people in the Middle East that migrated to Europe, and they're called blue bloods. And if you remember in the old history books, like in the 60s, they actually taught in high school that these kings and queens ruled by divine right. Well, their divine right came from the fact that the reptilians that created the human form said they were God, so if they were God, then they would be divine, and they're the ones that put all these shape-shifting reptilians in power. So that's a little bit of your background, and I don't know how much do they share any of that with you, William? Can you tell us a little bit about your background, maybe what they taught you as you were growing up? Obviously, since you're a shapeshifter, you obviously knew that you were a lot different than the other human beings, and you're probably warned when you go out in public to make sure that you don't accidentally shapeshift back into your reptilian form in public. So tell us about that, William, if you can.
Well, it's an interesting story as you are talking about there. And the key is in the blood. And there comes times when things come over you, and you have to have blood to maintain your form. And as you mentioned, there's so many aspects to this. This reptilian, yes, go ahead.
Well, I had a really very close friend who worked for the CIA and had a diplomatic immunity traveling around the world in different countries on their different missions. And they said that the shapeshifters, the shape-shifting reptilians that they worked with, always had to carry capsules of human blood in their attaché cases just in case something happened where they started losing their human form, and they had to swallow a capsule of human blood in order to maintain their human form. So their ability to maintain the human form required recent ingestions of human blood, just as you were saying, and the typical, maybe it was a 1 or 2 ounce capsule that they would carry in their attaché cases. So when they traveled abroad or wherever, or were in a meeting, or maybe they were in a government meeting with senators and congressmen, that sort of thing, and if they felt something coming over them, as you were saying, you could start to feel it coming over. And I know that a lot of reptilians, and you can watch this on TV, and a lot of times the first thing that happens when shapeshifters shift in public is their eyes start going from being round pupils to vertical pupils, something like a cat or a reptilian. So does that sound a little bit like what you're talking about? I know you're really kind of hesitant to talk about this. I know you're really opening Pandora's box when you share this, and I know that it's really hard for you to talk about this. But is there any additional comments that you could make on that?
Yes. What you're talking about is absolutely correct, and it is very difficult to talk about these things sometimes, and the blood, and I do want to mention that this one of the ways that we're very effective in keeping this below the surface, where people don't, I think we could agree that most people would think that this concept of reptilians and blood drinking reptilians is some kind of, it's a fantasy. It's just made up. And anybody that would believe in something like that, it's some kind of, they must be some kind of a conspiracy freak. And, the reptilians, and we're very effective at ridiculing and making fun of anybody that actually looks into these matters, and we make a joke of them. And I don't think anybody believes any of this nonsense about reptilians. I mean, yes, it occurs. But on the other hand, most people you talk to would say reptilians, that's some kind of a joke, isn't it? That's a conspiracy. So
yeah, they kind of look at you cross-eyed like you're nuts, don't they?
Well, they do, and you're one of those crazy internet conspiracists, and you're one of those David Icke guys, isn't that guy a joke? So we're very effective at mitigating and ridiculing. Really, it's about the ridicule. And we're very effective with that. And, most people are too busy with their own addiction and their own secret lives to even have a concern about reptilians and the racket that is being run on them.
Well, like here in the United States, all we do is sing the national anthem, praise the military, how wonderful they are for saving us from the invasion of all these evil enemies, and Grandma makes home-baked apple pie, and that's all we have to worry about, right? not to mention a good old football game on Sunday afternoon where we can watch football all day and forget everything and not even look into what might really be real. We just are living in a fantasy land of entertainment.
Absolutely.